Hi guys. I miss you so much. I haven't seen you guys in so long. So this is for my 4th grade group that I work with in the morning, the group that I'm reading Mr. Popper's Penguins with. So I decided that I'm going to make this YouTube page, this YouTube channel for you guys, because I know that we left off kind of on a cliffhanger whenever we were reading our story. We got about halfway and then we didn't get to finish. So, and I know some of you guys really liked this story, as do I, so I thought I would read it for you guys. So here's the plan. So what I'm going to do is each day I'm going to try to read one chapter and post it to this YouTube page so that you guys are able to hear it and kind of listen to the rest of this story. So I'm also going to send a link on Class Dojo to your parents. So that is how you'll get this video, and then I'll post the rest on this YouTube page. So just letting you guys know, I'm not requiring any work for this. So I know that we were doing some vocabulary words, and we were talking about, we had our post-it notes, we were post-it noting all the important parts, but I know you guys don't have your story because we left school so abruptly. So that's okay. So all I want you guys to do is just listen to me read. You can do it while you're sitting outside, while you're sitting inside, while you're doing some other work, and this is kind of your background noise. You can do whatever you want to do. Or you could sit here and watch me read this. I would love that because I know some of you guys are really into this story, and so am I. So that's what we're going to be doing. You guys can comment below this video. There should be comments. I would love to hear what you guys are thinking about this story and what you think might happen next in the chapter, because we're going to do a chapter a day. So that's what we're going to be doing. So today we're going to read chapter 11. We left off on chapter 10. And at the very end, if you guys remember, Captain Cook wasn't feeling his best. He was kind of sick. He was kind of down. He was moping around. He wasn't really being himself. He wasn't acting like himself. So Mr. Popper called in a veterinarian to see what he thought. And the veterinarian was kind of shocked. And he was kind of like, well, I can give him some medicine and maybe that'll help, but I'm not really sure what's wrong with him. Mr. Popper was really sad and he was kind of concerned for Captain Cook. And then at the very end of chapter 10, it says, an aquarium at Mammoth City had a penguin from the Antarctic, and it was rapidly failing because it was suffering from loneliness. And we talked about how penguins really like to be together and to be in a group. So whenever they're by themselves, they can kind of really get upset. So that's what this penguin was suffering with. And so this aquarium thought, oh, well, we'll just send it to 432 Proudfoot Avenue, which you guys know is Mr. Popper's address. So they decided to send this penguin to Mr. Popper, and her name is Greta. And we figured that out in the very last sentence. And before I read chapter 11, I know that some of you guys, before we left, made some predictions about what was going to happen in the story. And I know some of you guys said that Captain Cook was going to be really friendly with Greta, and I know some of you guys said that they were going to maybe fall in love. So those are some good predictions, and that's kind of what I want you guys to do whenever I keep reading these chapters, just so you guys can think about what's going to happen and what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to start reading chapter 11, and it is called Greta. So chapter 11, Greta. So Captain Cook did not die after all. There were 2 penguins in the refrigerator, one standing and one sitting on the nest under the ice. They are as like as 2 peas, said Mrs. Popper. As 2 penguins, you mean? Answered Mr. Popper. Yes, but which is which? At this moment, the standing penguin jumped out of the icebox, reached inside, and took one of the checkers from under the sitting penguin, whose eyes were closed in sleep, and laid it at Mr. Popper's feet. See, Mama, he's thanking me, said Mr. Popper, patting the penguin. At the South Pole, that's the way a penguin shows its friendship. Only it uses a stone instead of a checker. This one must be Captain Cook, and he's trying to show that he's grateful to us for getting him Greta and saving his life. So I'm going to pause right there. So Captain Cook came over and dropped a checker at Mr. Popper's feet. Sorry guys, that was an announcement and I was trying to hear it. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Captain Cook dropped this checker at Mr. Popper's feet, and he was like, Mr. Popper said, oh, that's his way of showing me that he likes me and that he's showing friendship, because that's what they do in the wild, but they do it with stones, of course. And so he thinks that Captain Cook is giving him this checker because he's thanking him for giving him Greta and saving him his life, or saving his life. So I think that they're getting along great. All right, here we go. Yes, but how are we going to tell them apart? It's very confusing. I will go down in the cellar and get some white paint and paint their names on their black backs. And he opened the cellar door and started down, nearly tripping when Captain Cook unexpectedly tobogganed down after him. When he came up again, Mr. Popper had a brush and a small paint can in his hands, while the penguin had a white Captain Cook on his back. Gook, said Captain Cook, proudly showing his name to the penguin in the icebox. Gaw, said the sitting penguin, and then squirming around in her nest, she turned her back to Mr. Popper. So Mr. Popper sat down on the floor in front of the icebox while Captain Cook watched, first with one eye, then with the other. What are you going to call her? Asked Mrs. Popper. Greta. It's a nice name, said Mrs. Popper, and she seems like a nice bird, too. But the two of them fill the icebox, and pretty soon there will be eggs, and the next thing you know, the icebox won't be big enough for your penguins. Besides, you haven't done a thing about how I'm going to keep the food cold. I will, my love, promised Mr. Popper. It is already pretty cold for the middle of October, and it will soon be cold enough outside for Captain Cook and Greta. Yes, said Mrs. Popper, but if you keep them outside the house, they may run away. Mama, said Mr. Popper, you put your food back in the icebox tonight, and we will just keep Greta and Captain Cook in the house. Captain Cook can help me move the nest into the other room. Then I will open all the windows and leave them open, and the penguins will be comfortable. They will be comfortable, all right, said Mrs. Popper, but what about us? We can wear our winter overcoats and hats in the house, said Mr. Popper, and he got up to go around and open all the windows. It certainly is colder, said Mrs. Popper, sneezing. The next few days were even colder, but the Poppers soon got used to sitting around in their overcoats. Greta and Captain Cook always occupied the chairs nearest to the open windows. One night, quite early in November, there was a blizzard, and when the Poppers got up in the morning, there were large drifts of snow all over the house. Mrs. Popper wanted to get her broom and have Mr. Popper bring his snow shovel to clear away the drifts. But the penguins were having so much fun in the snow that Mr. Popper insisted it should be left where it was. In fact, he even went so far as to bring an old garden hose up from the basement and sprinkle all the floors that night until the water was an inch deep. By the next morning, all of the Popper floors were covered with smooth ice, with snowdrifts around the edges near the open windows. Both Greta and Captain Cook were tremendously pleased with all that ice. They would go up on the snowdrift at one end of the living room and run down one end behind the other onto the ice until they were running too fast to keep their balance. Then they would flop on their stomachs and toboggan across the slippery ice. This amused Bill and Janie so much that they tried it too, on their stomachs, of their overcoats. This in turn pleased the penguins greatly. Then Mr. Popper moved all the furniture in the living room to one side so that the penguins and the children would have plenty of room for real sledding. It was a little hard at first to move the furniture because the feet of the chairs had frozen into the ice. Before I read any farther, because there's a picture I want to show you guys on this next page, what do you guys think about Mr. Popper kind of turning their house into this sanctuary for these penguins? Because right now, I think, and I know you guys would agree because whenever we would have our discussions, we would talk about this stuff. I think that Mr. Popper is picking the penguins in a way over than he's picking his family. And the reason I say that is because he's opening all the windows up on this really cold night and making all of the family wear their biggest jackets, pretty much like they're playing in the snow, inside, because he just wants these penguins to be really happy. And he also covered the floor in water, an inch of water. And he covered all of their floors in their house so that they would freeze and turn into ice for the penguins. And then he scooted all the furniture over so that they could have as much fun as they wanted. I just want you to think about for a second, how do you think Miss Popper is going to feel? How do you think she would think about all this? What do you think she would think about all this? I'm just kind of curious. So if you guys want to comment and let me know if you're just thinking about it, whatever you think. I'm just kind of curious. So there's a picture before we go on to the next page. And it's a picture and it shows them sliding around. The furniture is inside. The snow is coming inside. Captain Cook's got his white paint on his back because Mr. Popper's trying to tell them apart, so he printed their names on their back, painted on them. So they're inside the house, the window's open, it's snowy. I just wonder what Mrs. Popper's feeling about all this. Okay, here we go. Toward afternoon, the weather got warmer and the ice began to melt. Now, Papa, said Mrs. Popper, you really must do something. We can't go on like this. But Captain Cook and Greta are both fat and sleek, and the children have never been so rosy. It may be very healthy, said Mrs. Popper, as she mopped up the flood, but it's very untidy. I will do something about it tomorrow, said Mr. Popper. And that is where we leave off. There's one more picture. It's got Greta. So, and our next chapter is going to be chapter 12. So that is where we will lead off tomorrow. So, Mrs. Popper's not feeling that great about all this because she's really into having a really tidy and clean home. And now she's got a flood, she's got snow coming in the window, she's got ice everywhere on the floor. And now she has 2 penguins in her house, plus her children that are going crazy with the penguins. So he says he's going to do something about it tomorrow. So I guess we'll have to see what happens tomorrow when we read our story. I'm so glad that I get to do this with you guys. I'm so glad that you guys get to listen to me read and listen to the story again. I know there's a movie for Mr. Popper's Penguins. I don't think it's the same storyline exactly as this story. I think it might be changed a little bit. But if you guys wanted, you could watch that movie after we read our story, or you could read it now, but it might give you some spoilers. So if you guys wanted to do that, if you guys want to draw pictures with this story, I'm not requiring you to do anything. I just thought I would share that with you guys. Okay, I miss you guys. I can't wait to see you guys soon. And I hope you enjoyed chapter 11. I will see you guys tomorrow for chapter 12. Bye, guys.